The film begins with a 20-year-old girl named Katia, who lives in a small village with her grandfather Ivan, because her father had passed away and her mother remarried another man. Her grandfather Ivan was a war veteran from World War II, now enjoying his retirement in peace in the neighborhood they lived in. They lived a simple and happy life. In that neighborhood, there were 3 reckless young men who constantly harassed girls without caring about the consequences of their actions. They held parties every Wednesday and invited girls to join them. One Wednesday, they couldn't find any girl willing to attend their party. While searching, they noticed Katia walking by on the street. One of the boys, Vadim, was a former classmate of Katia. When he told his friends that he knew her, they asked him to invite her. Vadim was aware of their intentions but still agreed and went with Igor to ask Katia to join their party. At first, Katia hesitated, but they told her it was Boris' birthday party and that she was the only one who could make him happy. She declined, saying her grandfather was waiting for her at home. However, after their persistent insistence, she finally agreed to go for just 5 minutes and then leave. When she arrived at the apartment, she noticed bottles of alcohol on the table, which made her feel uneasy and distrustful, but she didn't want to appear rude. They offered her a drink, which she refused at first, but they kept pushing until she finally gave in. They reminded her how good she was at singing during school and asked her to sing. While she was distracted singing, Boris secretly added a drug to her drink. The boys then began to approach her inappropriately. Katia sensed their intentions and tried to leave, but suddenly felt dizzy from the drug. They took her to a room and surrounded her. Realizing what they were about to do, she tried to resist but couldn't defend herself. Boris threw her onto the bed and tore off her clothes while the other 2 helped him and assaulted her. After hours of desperate resistance, Katia gave up. In the end, they let her go and gave her some money to keep quiet. Katia was in such deep shock that she didn't say a word. She left, threw the money into the street, and went home. After she left, Vadim grew anxious that they might get into trouble, but the other 2 were confident no one could touch them, especially since Vadim's father was a high-ranking police officer and would protect them. When Katia got home, she collapsed on the floor in tears. Her grandfather noticed bruises on her legs and immediately realized what had happened. Furious, he asked who had done this to her. When he learned it was those boys, he rushed to their apartment to confront them, but on the way, a neighbor stopped him and advised him to call the police first. The police raided the apartment and arrested the boys. The officer in charge was extremely angry and wanted to hit them. At first, the boys denied everything, so the officer took them to another room for questioning and threatened them with prison time among murderers and criminals. Boris panicked and confessed that they had brought Katia to the apartment and assaulted her. Meanwhile, Colonel Nikolai, Vadim's father, arrived and tried to use his influence to take the boys to his office to handle things privately. But the officer informed him that they had already confessed, and that a piece of paper with Katia's blood had been found, proving their guilt and requiring their immediate arrest. Nikolai insisted on taking them, but the officer made it clear he needed a court order to do so. Another officer arrived and reported that the boys had been holding girls' day parties every Wednesday and had mistreated many girls. The neighbors all demanded the boys be imprisoned for their perverted behavior. Nikolai had no choice but to leave, though he was determined to get his son out of this mess. The next morning, Ivan became worried when he didn't find Katia in her room. He called out to her, and she replied from the bathroom, saying she couldn't bear to look at herself in the mirror. Ivan was deeply concerned for his granddaughter and didn't know how to help her through the trauma. He wanted to call the doctor who lived upstairs, but Katia refused and said she didn't want anyone to know what had happened to her. He told her that the neighbors already knew because of the police search the night before. Katia was terrified by this, and now that everyone knew what had happened, she felt she would be forever labeled as the girl who had been assaulted. Her grandfather tried to comfort her. Later, the doctor came, examined her, and told her that she was sick and physically weak, advising her to stay home and rest for a few days. Later, Ivan found out that the boys had been released from jail due to the influence and power of Vadim's father. He was furious but did not give up. Determined to get justice for his granddaughter, he went to a police officer to file a case in court. But the officer seemed to be loyal to Nikolai and mocked Katia, saying she had been too nice to the boys and had gone to the apartment willingly. He even added, "Didn't you try to get close to one of them so he might marry you?" Katia was devastated by his words but couldn't respond. After everything that had happened, Katia no longer had the strength or will to pursue justice. She just wanted to forget everything and move on with her life. But Ivan felt differently. He wasn't ready to let it go so easily. The next day, Ivan went out looking for the young men, who were sitting in their car at the time. He walked straight up to them and said he would remember their faces well, then walked away. The boys thought they were protected and that no one could touch them, so they didn't take the warning seriously, but little did they know they had made the biggest mistake of their lives. After that, Ivan went to a friend who was a judge and asked for his help. But the judge replied, "You should ve raised Katia better so she wouldn't turn out to be a whore." Shocked by those words, Ivan left immediately. At that moment, he decided he would take justice into his own hands. He went to a real estate broker and sold his vacation house for $5,000, determined to use the money for revenge. That same day, when he returned home, Katia told him that Vadim's father had visited and left them an envelope full of money. Ivan became furious upon hearing that and went straight to Nikolai to throw the money in his face. Katia then told him that her aunt had left them the keys to her apartment so they could take care of her birds while she was away. When Ivan went to the apartment, he realized it faced directly across from the criminal's place, and he decided to use that in his revenge plan. Ivan headed to the market and approached a weapons dealer who wanted to sell him a handgun. But Ivan was looking for a sniper rifle. When he asked about it, the dealer grew nervous and said, "I don't sell those kinds of weapons." As Ivan was walking away, another dealer approached him, saying he had overheard the conversation and could offer him the rifle he needed at a good price. The second dealer took Ivan to a secret location and showed him a collection of weapons. Ivan's attention was caught by a sniper rifle, which he purchased. Before leaving, he tested the weapon by shooting at some cans, hitting every target with precision. He then requested a silencer, which made the dealer suspicious that Ivan was planning to use the weapon in a crime. That night, when Ivan returned home, he found that Katia's mother had returned from Turkey with her new boyfriend. She had never really been present in Katia's life, always consumed by her personal relationships. At first, she brought gifts and seemed happy to be back. But when she found out what had happened to her daughter, she simply told her to forget about it and move on. Soon after, the mother asked Ivan for money. He realized she had only come back for that, not for Katia. When he confronted her, she admitted it, and said that if he didn't give her the money, she would ask Nikolai. Furious, Ivan threw her out of the house. The next day, while Ivan was playing chess with his friends, he saw the boys entering their apartment. He took advantage of the opportunity and went up to Katia's aunt's apartment, which faced the boys' place. He used the sniper rifle and shot Boris in a sensitive area, causing him to lose his manhood. After completing his mission, he hid the weapon and returned to his friends as if nothing had happened. The other two boys rushed Boris to the hospital. A short while later, Nikolai arrived to ask what had happened. He was convinced they had been playing with a weapon and accidentally shot him, but they denied it and said they were just talking. Nikolai warned them to be careful because he suspected someone was seeking revenge. Meanwhile, the officer began to suspect that Ivan was behind the attacks, as he had every motive. He was sure Nikolai would go visit Ivan in a few days. Ivan returned once again to the aunt's apartment, this time targeting Igor. Igor was sitting in his car listening to music, completely unaware of his surroundings. Ivan shot the car's fuel tank, causing it to explode instantly. Igor stumbled out of the vehicle, but the lower half of his body was on fire. People nearby tried to save him, but the flames were too intense, and his lower body was completely burned, leaving him unable to walk again. Now, Nikolai was convinced that his son would be the next target. He warned him, saying, "You need to be very careful and protect the house well. The sniper could strike at any moment." Vadim became terrified and was overwhelmed with fear. The officer then went to Katia's home to speak with Ivan, but he wasn't there. Katia told him her grandfather usually went to her aunt's apartment to take care of the birds. The officer immediately realized that the apartment faced Boris' place, where the incident had occurred. He took the apartment key without Katia noticing and went to confirm his suspicions. At the same time, Nikolai and his corrupt officers went to Ivan's house with a search warrant, convinced that he was behind the attacks and determined to find the sniper rifle. They searched the entire house but found nothing. Katia's aunt arrived and asked for her apartment key. The officers insisted on searching her place too. Ivan grew anxious because that's where he had hidden the weapon. They searched every corner but came up empty-handed. Nikolai pleaded with Ivan not to harm his son. Ivan responded, "Your son got what he deserved." Nikolai took the word seriously and feared something had already happened to Vadim. He rushed home to check on him. After he left, Ivan said that he had done nothing to Vadim. When Nikolai arrived at his home, he knocked repeatedly and called out to his son. But Vadim, having been living in constant fear for days, believed the person at the door was coming to kill him, so he shot through the door, and the bullet hit Nikolai. At that moment, it became clear that Vadim had lost his mind from the trauma. The police brought in a psychiatrist, but the chances of his recovery were very slim. Later, the officer invited Ivan to his home. When Ivan arrived, the officer told him, "I took the rifle before the police could find it, because I know those boys were the ones in the wrong, and you did the right thing." But he warned him never to take such action again. When Ivan returned home, he found his granddaughter Katya singing a beautiful song, a sign that she had begun to heal from what had happened to her. And this is where today's film ends.